its age. 72-year-old Pete Carroll, who stepped down after 14 seasons. Seahawks expected to hire Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald. At 36 years old, he'll become the youngest head coach in the NFL.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's almost over. The head coaching cycle, one of the most exciting and surprising head coaching cycles that we've seen in recent NFL history, is coming to a close. And today we got a brand new surprise and a brand new hiring, and I'm excited to break it down for you guys. So before we get to the content, make sure you drop like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all that out of the way, break! For the Super Bowl, PrizePicks is blessing us with an easy way to make $100. All Patrick Mahomes needs is one passing yard in the Super Bowl for a square to hit, which means he's pretty much a free square. First, download PrizePicks and use my promo code Mikerophone when you sign up to get up to $100 deposit match on your initial deposit, and then make these picks really quickly before they change the lines on them. So for me, I'm pairing Mahomes' free square with Isaiah Pacheco, who's had at least one touchdown in his last 5 games, so that's easy, and Christian McCaffrey, who has had more than 88.5 rushing yards in 4 of his last 5 games. Of course, I give away all my picks for free on Instagram, and I highly recommend you turn on notifications for my Instagram story so you can get the picks quickly before they move the lines and you lose your advantage. And thank you, PrizePicks, for the sponsor. Mike Check 1212. What's going on, everybody? One of the most surprising head coaching firings from a few weeks ago was none other than Pete Carroll, an individual that was able to bring a Super Bowl to the Seattle Seahawks, which would have been 2 Super Bowls if it wasn't for, well, him deciding to do this.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line.
Now, with that being said, the Seattle Seahawks made a very surprising decision, and a very interesting one at that, when they decided that they were going to fire Pete Carroll. Now, I know what you guys might be saying.
Mike, he wasn't fired, he was elevated to an advisory role.
Well, if an individual has been elevated to an advisory role, would he sound like this at his press conference?
I'm freaking jacked. I'm fired up. I'm not tired. I'm not worn down. You guys tried your best. You didn't wear me out. It's the end of the season. I'm supposed to be, go lay on a cot somewhere. I ain't feeling like that. And, there's what's coming. I don't know. I got no idea. And I really don't care right now. But I do. I'm excited about it because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to study. There's some great discoveries that are going to come our way. And as my all-time mentor, Bud Grant, said, not in so many words, there's rivers to wade. There's waves to catch, and there's mountains to hike. And it wasn't exactly how Bud said it, but I get it. And that's some cool stuff that we're going to do here.
Man quite literally said he still has the fire within him to coach. It sounds like he had a gun pointed to his head, telling him,
"Hey, you're done coaching. You're not going to be our coach anymore."
And I could understand it. It's nothing against Pete Carroll. It's just nowadays everyone wants a young hotshot head coach like Sean McVay. He has to be under the age of 40. He has to be an offensive genius. It's like these dudes are popping out of everywhere. Whether it's Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Zach Taylor, Kevin O'Connell, Brandon Staley. Hey, you get out of here. So I don't know how he got in there. So the current trend in the NFL is whenever you have a head coaching opening, you typically chase after the young hotshot offensive coordinator. The problem is when you wait this long to potentially get a offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator that is currently in the AFC or NFC championship or close to the Super Bowl, you might end up getting burned. The same way the Washington Commanders got burned yesterday with Ben Johnson deciding to stay in Detroit. And once again, collectively, every team that wanted a brand new offensive coordinator also got burned when they found out the best candidate to potentially become a head coach that was an offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick, decided to stay with the Houston Texans. Honestly, this is something that is very impressive at that. It's very reminiscent of what's going on with the Detroit Lions currently, because Bobby Slowick and the Houston Texans agreed to a contract that gives him a pay raise and keeps him in Houston. Okay, fine. How about we go after the Houston Texans QB coach? CJ Stroud was an absolute monster this past year. Well, the Houston Texans Texans quarterbacks coach Gerard Johnson has informed teams interested in hiring him as an offensive coordinator that he plans to return to Houston, a big development for the Texans as Johnson wants to finish what he started with CJ Stroud, DeMeco Ryans, Bobby Slowick, and the organization. Wow, I mean, the Houston Texans are really starting out the offseason strong, maintaining continuity, and trying to finish what they started. Very impressive. But that means teams like the Seattle Seahawks and the Washington Commanders might be a little screwed. Well, in the case of the Seattle Seahawks, what if they went about this in a completely different way? You see, you don't typically need to hire an offensive-minded head coach if you already have a genius at the offensive coordinator position. And I don't care what you say, Seahawks fans, but Shane Waldron at the offensive coordinator position is brilliant. How do I know he's brilliant? Because he had Geno Smith throwing for 70% completion percentage in the 2022 season with over 4,200 passing yards, 30 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. I know Geno Smith being a good QB is a recent development, but if you told any football fan that Geno Smith was going to be a Pro Bowl quarterback 7 years ago, they would laugh in your face. The Seattle Seahawks offense is fine. They have Shane Waldron as the offensive coordinator. Geno Smith has been really good as their quarterback. They have studs like Kenneth Walker, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, who is trying to prolong his career by making sure he never gets tackled after making a reception. You don't necessarily need a brand new offensive mind for the Seattle Seahawks, but what you do need is potentially a brand new defensive mind for the Seattle Seahawks. When you consider this team's core on defense is extremely young, I mean, Draymond Jones is 27, Derek Hall is 22, Jordan Brooks is 26, Boye Mafe 25, Tariq Woolen's 24, Devin Witherspoon's 23. They have Kobe Bryant and Michael Jackson on their team, for crying out loud. They actually do. Kobe with a C-O-B-Y. Yeah, they actually have. Yeah, I know, crazy. You want to make sure you hire a defensive-minded head coach that won't potentially leave once this team establishes its identity. A defensive identity because they have a lot of young and very talented defensive players, and they already have a very talented offensive coordinator. You don't want a situation like what the Cowboys are going through with Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn comes in, takes one of the league's worst defenses and makes it one of the league's best. Yeah, I'm sure Micah Parsons had something to do with that. But now, year after year, Cowboy fans are nervous. What if we lose Dan Quinn? What if he decides to take a job somewhere else? Because this is definitely a possibility. Dan Quinn is considered to be one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. I even said early on that Dan Quinn was my leader to potentially become the Seattle Seahawks head coach, because there's familiarity there. He even said point blank today that if he was offered the Commanders or the Seahawks head coaching job, he would take it. Man, it's like he's desperate to get out of Dallas at this point. But it seems like one of those teams are officially going to be crossed off the list, because according to Adam Schefter, there's a youth movement in Seattle. The Seahawks are expected to hire Ravens defensive coordinator Mike Macdonald as their new head coach, league sources tell ESPN. They're still finalizing the deal, but Seattle has its man. At 36, Mike Macdonald now becomes the NFL's youngest head coach. For those of you guys wondering who the replacement could potentially be for Mike Macdonald in Baltimore, Denard Wilson is one of the most in-demand candidates out there. He instantly becomes an option to become Mike Macdonald's replacement in Baltimore. The way this all went down was Mike Macdonald was apparently in Seattle for an interview to be the brand new head coach. Seattle was willing to wait for him if Baltimore made it to the Super Bowl. We all know that's not going to happen. Sorry, Ravens fans. Instead, their season ended last week and he takes a big-time job. He's currently in Seattle on a second interview. Now, I gotta admit, Mike Macdonald was incredible for the Baltimore Ravens last year. The Ravens were the top defense in all of the NFL last year, allowing the fewest points per game with 16.5, while also recording the most sacks with 60 and takeaways with 31 this past year. And I think this is a home run hire because the Seattle Seahawks future isn't in their offense. For all you know, and don't get me wrong, Geno Smith has been amazing as of late, but you don't know how long Geno Smith's going to be the quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks moving forward. You don't know if the Seattle Seahawks experiment with potentially trading Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf, because they're very deep at the wide receiver position, and they just drafted Jackson Smith-Njigba this past offseason. And that's not to say anything against the Seattle Seahawks offense, because I think they have an awesome offense with Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Kenneth Kenneth Walker. But whoever comes in and decides to be the new head coach of the Seattle Seahawks obviously needed to prioritize defense first, because the Seattle Seahawks defensive core is very special, very young, and has the potential to be one of the best in the entire NFL, which is why I believe this is one of the few instances where I would agree with hiring a defensive coordinator as opposed to an offensive coordinator for the head coaching position. My assumption is they're going to keep Shane Waldron as the offensive coordinator because there's really no reason to move on from him. I mean, again, and this is with all due respect to Geno Smith, and maybe if you're a little younger, it might be hard to wrap your head around this, but Geno Smith was quite literally a meme 5 years ago in terms of how bad he was at quarterback. And now he's a quarterback that has thrown for over 4,000 passing yards in his first full year as a starter with Seattle, and over 3,600 passing yards in his second full season with Seattle, but he also played in 2 less games. So I love this plan. You bring in youth, you're probably going to keep Shane Waldron as your offensive coordinator. You bring in an individual that really could get the best out of Devin Witherspoon, Tariq Woolen, Jordan Brooks, and that incredible young Seattle Seahawks defense. I think the Seahawks have been doing a masterful job rebuilding. It's really difficult to see a legend like Pete Carroll go. I think they really nailed this hire by bringing in Mike Macdonald, which is leading everyone to look at one team and one team in particular now. What's going to happen with the Washington Commanders? It's really tough because Bobby Slowick isn't leaving the Houston Texans, and their worst nightmare came true yesterday when Ben Johnson said that he is not leaving the Detroit Lions. So who are they going to hire now? Mike Vrabel, Dan Quinn? Well, we made a video on it yesterday, and I'll leave it in the end screen for you guys to check out. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.